Before I begin, I just gotta say, it looks like I've acquired at least one really passionate hater. So if you look at the past videos I've posted throughout the past, I don't know, few weeks or so, it looks like I've gotten at least one dislike on every video. And I'm not gonna count the Intel one because I know a lot of people are kind of allergic to the truth and they're still in denial, and they bought the stock back when it was like $60 a share and they're still bag holding. But I'm talking about the last video I made about compound interest. Like, who dislikes a video about compound interest? Anyways, I'm really happy though that this channel's finally gotten big enough such that people are developing really passionate opinions about this channel. Now, I would prefer if you hit the like button instead of the dislike button, but it's a free country and that part is up to you. But yeah, if you're watching this video, please hit the like button if you enjoy my content, because I need people to counteract the haters. Also, in case you haven't noticed and you're wondering why there was no video yesterday, I've decided to change my upload schedule from Monday, Wednesday, Friday to Monday, Wednesday, Saturday. So I think this new change just gives me a little bit more breathing time during the middle of the week. And also, I've noticed a lot of YouTubers don't upload during the weekend. So if I consistently upload during the weekend, I think it'll give it more of a dynamic. So if you check back on YouTube during the weekend, then my video is more likely to get seen by you, right? So I think it's a better way to reach my content. And looking at my YouTube analytics, it does look like a lot of my audience do watch these videos on the weekends. So I think it'll be a great addition. Anyways, if you're wondering why there was no video on Friday, that's the reason why. Don't worry, I'm not going anywhere. I wouldn't trade you guys for the world. So today we're talking about 3 stocks that I think are potentially undervalued. And now the key word here is potentially. So I'm not saying that they are undervalued or anything like that. I'm just saying that they may be undervalued. So keep in mind, I am not a financial advisor. This is not financial advice. This is just for educational and entertainment purposes only. So please do your own research and don't just listen to some guy on YouTube talk about a stock and then go ahead and just dump your life savings on it. Always do your own research. But in my opinion, I think that these stocks might be considered undervalued. Now, if you've been paying attention to the stock market at all, you know that the stock market has been absolutely skyrocketing, right? So we're nearing all-time highs, especially the tech industry. And things like Apple, Amazon, and Facebook, they all just reported their earnings and they're all up massively. So in fact, you can make an argument that a lot of stocks, especially tech, is super expensive right now. Now, I don't know if you want to use the word overvalued, because some people can make an argument that they're not in fact overvalued because they're just trading at what they're supposed to be because they're doing so well. And certainly you can make an argument in that favor as well, but you can't make an argument saying that they're not expensive, because they absolutely are really expensive. So if you're wondering where the deals are on the stock market, it's becoming harder and harder to find good deals. It's really difficult to find good deals right now. And you can buy Apple if you want, but keep in mind, if you're buying Apple right now, literally at all-time highs, $400 a share before the split. They just announced a split, so it's going to be like $100 later, but before the split, $400 a share, you're literally buying at all-time highs. So these 3 stocks today, granted they're not the highest quality stocks ever in the world or something, but I think if we're betting on a recovery and we're betting that the stock market is going to bounce back to normal in other sectors other than tech, I think these 3 stocks could potentially have some nice upside to the future. Anyway, so the first stock that I want to talk about on this list is Tesla. I'm just kidding, guys. I got you there. Believe me, I would love to buy more Tesla shares, but the price ain't coming down anytime soon. So, in all seriousness, the first stock on this list is Power Corporation, ticker symbol POW. Now, many of you might not have heard of this stock before. I probably only talked about them once or twice on this channel before. But Power Corporation is a conglomerate that owns a bunch of financial services here in Canada, namely a company called Great-West Lifeco, which is a life insurance company. And they own a whole bunch of other financial services firms that I'm not going to talk about. It'll take way too long to go through each and every one of them. But most notably, they own about 80% of Wealthsimple, which is where yours truly, myself, works at currently. Now, I know you're going to say I'm biased because of this fact, and granted, I probably am, but hear me out. Here's what I have to say. If I didn't have a positive opinion about Wealthsimple, I would not have applied to Wealthsimple in the first place. I do think that Wealthsimple provides products that are pretty revolutionary, at least here in Canada, and not that many other companies can match them. And also, Wealthsimple is a private company, and I'm not really high enough on the totem pole to be granted like stock options or anything like that. So there's not really a way for me to gain ownership of the company other than buying a Power Corporation stock. So that's kind of the only way that I can get my hands on potentially some ownership equity in Wealthsimple. So anyways, let's look at some valuation metrics of Power Corp. So looking at this chart, we can see that it's currently trading at some pretty low valuations. So forward PE is under 8, price to sales ratio is under 0.4, price to book is also under 1. Now I know typically companies in the financial services trade very low in terms of valuation, but I think even factoring in this fact, Power Corp is trading at some pretty low valuations. Now if we compare it to something like an RBC, we can see that it's trading at even lower valuations than RBC. Now you go, okay, so Power Corp runs a life insurance company, right? What about we compare it to a life insurance company? So let's do that. I'm going to compare it to Manulife. And as you can see, the valuation is very similar to Manulife. And I like Manulife too, by the way. I just think that Power Corp is slightly more diversified across like different sectors. So in terms of diversification, I like Power Corp just slightly more than Manulife, but I think Manulife is good too. And don't forget about the dividend yield on Power Corp. So currently it sits at over 7%. Which is pretty great. Now granted the payout ratio is a little high, but the stock itself has dropped from its pre-pandemic highs in the mid-30s to its low 20s. So for betting on a recovery, there might be some capital gains in there for you too. So that's Power Corp. Now let's move on to stock number 2. So stock number 2 that I've chosen for this list is Southwest Airlines, ticker symbol LUV. Now I know, you guys are gonna give me a lot of heck for picking a travel stock, right? Because travel industry, untouchable right now, right? But if you're gonna bet on travel, I do think that Southwest is the best way to do it. I've said in the past that I think Southwest Airlines is one of the best airlines, probably the best airline in the United States, and that remains to be true. Now some of you know I used to own some Southwest Airlines stock, and I bought in back when Warren Buffett announced that he was getting rid of all his airline stocks. So the airline industry just absolutely plummeted through the floor, and I managed to pick up some shares of Southwest at like mid-20s ish, right? And then we had that big rally in like end of May, early June. So the stock shot up to like 30 something dollars a share, and it just sold out of all of it. But now it's trading at below where I sold it from. So I'm thinking potentially I might want to buy it back because Southwest Airlines is a really good airline in my opinion. Now going through some of the stats, it's really difficult to predict how well the airline industry is going to do in the near future. So I wouldn't put too much weight on the forward PE estimates right now, but here they are in case you want to see. More or less, I want to pay attention to the balance sheet because I think it's a situation where if the airline can like not go bankrupt in the next few years, then you'll make money if you buy into it now because I think airlines are here to stay, right? It might not be these specific airlines. You're saying that, oh, like maybe the Roni situation will cause all these airlines to declare bankruptcy, right? But I'm saying like air travel is gonna be a thing to stay. Like it's not like people are gonna go back to like horse and buggy forever, right? There's still gonna be airplanes and there's still gonna be air travel eventually because it's just so much better than like driving to a place, right? And what if you need to go somewhere overseas? You can't drive across the Pacific Ocean, right? You guys remember back in the day on Google Maps, if you were to put in like walking directions from San Francisco to Honolulu, Hawaii, it would tell you to kayak across the Pacific Ocean. I'm gonna try and find a screenshot of it, but if I can't find a screenshot, you guys are just gonna continue to watch me talk. But yeah, anyways, back in the day when Google Maps told you to kayak across the Pacific Ocean, yeah, we're not gonna like kayak across the Pacific Ocean. We're gonna fly across the Pacific Ocean, right? So I don't think that people will be down to kayak even despite the COVID situation making people afraid to travel. So I think eventually we're gonna like get back to a point where we're not afraid to travel anymore, probably after a vaccine is found. So my point is that if these particular airlines don't go bankrupt, then they'll bounce back. So anyways, looking at the balance sheet, I gotta say it's not the worst balance sheet I've ever seen in the world. It's actually decently okay. Now, they barely have any current debts in comparison to their cash balance. In fact, they have more cash than their current debts and long-term debts combined. Now, not all airlines are created equal, obviously. Comparing this to, say, like an American Airlines, let's just say the balance sheet of American Airlines doesn't look as good. So if I'm picking which US airline has the best chance of survival, I gotta pick Southwest. So if you're gonna make the point that Southwest stock has not dropped as much as American Airlines stock, that point is true. But in this case, I want to point out to you that you probably shouldn't just go for the absolute cheapest stock that you could possibly find in the airline industry, right? Like, you want a good deal, but you also don't want to pick the absolute worst stock in the bunch, right? You don't want to like scrape the bottom of the barrel and pick the absolute worst thing. So I think that Southwest is like a good medium in between the two, where you're getting something in the travel industry, which has been really beaten down right now, but you're also getting something that's relatively high quality. So I think it's a happy medium between just absolutely YOLOing on like American Airlines stock or American Airlines call options, right? God forbid. Or yeah, and like picking a stock that's like super high and super richly valued, like an Apple or Amazon or whatever. So I think that Southwest is like kind of like a medium play. So yeah, anyways, that's number 2. Now for the last stock on this list, number 3. I know this stock might be kind of controversial actually, so a lot of you might disagree with me, or a lot of you might give me a little bit of hate for this one, but I'm gonna come out and say it anyways, and bear with me and hear me out, okay? So number 3 is Lyft. Ticker symbol LYFT. Okay, so a pandemic is just about the worst thing that could happen to the business model of rideshare, right? And I get that. And as a result, everyone's hating on Lyft right now. The stock's absolutely in the gutters. And yeah, people are just selling this stock left and right. And, you know, I kind of get it because, you know, rideshare is really bad right now. And also they're far away from profitability, right? So they're burning cash and they're not profitable, and their business model just absolutely sucks right now. So I get all of that. But as you can see, the stock price has fallen quite dramatically since February, since the Roni situation started. And I think that the bright side is that the price to sales ratio of Lyft is now under 3, which is, it might not seem that low at first, but it's actually pretty low in the tech industry if you compare it to like Apple, Amazon, Facebook, Google, or whatever, right? Or God forbid, like Peloton or Zoom, or all these like stocks that have sort of benefited from the Roni situation. If you compare the valuation of like a Lyft to those, you know, it's just a night and day difference, right? So looking at Lyft's balance sheet, they gotta have a good balance sheet because they're not profitable, like I said, right? So if they run out of cash, they're kind of donezo. So looking at the balance sheet, it looks okay. They have a lot of cash. And yeah, they don't have like that much debt in comparison. And I know one question I will inevitably get is, why not Uber? And actually, I like Uber too. And obviously, they're a much bigger player and much more diversified in this space. And they have Uber Eats and Uber Freight and stuff like that. But of course, as a result, their valuation is also much higher. So looking at Uber's valuation, you can see that they come in at a price to sales ratio of just over 3.5. So it's noticeably higher than Lyft. And yeah, I know Uber has a greater market share, but looking at this breakdown of market share in the United States, Lyft is actually coming in at around a 30% market share, which is nothing to scoff at. So it's not the most dominant player, Uber is, of course, but Lyft owns a decent chunk of the market nonetheless. So I think we need to get rid of the mentality that in order for Uber to win, Lyft has to lose, or vice versa. So I think that the market for rideshare is big enough for both to succeed. Now, if you ever used a taxi before, I'm talking about like a traditional taxi, not like a rideshare. So if you ever used a taxi before and then you go back to using like a rideshare, like an Uber or Lyft or something, you can see that it's a night and day difference, right? Guaranteed you'll never go back to the taxi. Why? Well, because there's just so many advantages to Uber and Lyft, right? Generally, they're much cheaper than a traditional taxi. And, you know, if you're travel a lot, if you're a tourist or something, and you go to a foreign country where you don't speak the language, where you might not be familiar with the customs, you get into a taxi and you're not sure of like the company that you're doing business with because you've never heard of this taxi company before because you're from a different country, then the taxi driver might just see that, oh, you're not a local, I'm just gonna charge you like 2-3 times what I charge to the locals, right? And you might be using a foreign currency anyway, so you might be using a currency that you don't know how much exactly it is, and then also you don't speak the language, so it's really hard for you to like argue against the taxi driver if they demand like a ton of money, right? So yeah, if the taxi driver is like, okay, this will cost like 30,000 pesos, you'll be like, I don't know how much 30,000 pesos is, like here you go, right? Like, I don't know, like that happens all the time with traditional taxis. So if you're using Uber or Lyft, you pay inside the app and you don't talk about payment, you don't talk about money with the driver, right? Which I think is a great advantage that Uber and Lyft has. So I'm not really worried about the ride-sharing market and as a business model. I think that ride-sharing is here to stay. And also, I just gotta mention, if you look at Lyft's market cap, they're coming in at just under $9 billion right now, which I think could potentially make them a compelling buyout candidate for someone like an Amazon, or if Google wants to buy them and add them to their Waymo like network. Now, why would these big companies buy out Lyft? Well, Lyft's been pushing into the autonomous driving sector too. So if you're an Amazon, or if you're a Google, or if you're just any other big tech firm, and you want to get into the autonomous driving space because you think that that's going to be a huge thing in the future, I think it'll be really easy for you to like spend, I don't know, $10 billion or something like that and just like buy out Lyft, where you already have an established network and everything, rather than like trying to build everything from scratch, right? And if you're Google, maybe like by buying Lyft, they can add their network to Waymo and then expand their like Waymo capabilities, right? Because Waymo's not really that big right now. So I think if Google's really trying to push hard, they're gonna invest more into Waymo, right? Or they might just give up and cancel Waymo. So I don't really know what, like, obviously I'm not an insider, I don't know what Google's gonna do, but I think that if Google wants to really commit to doing autonomous driving, maybe they should pick up a company like Lyft or something and just like get a foothold in the market, right? Because as I said earlier, Lyft already has like 30% of the ride-sharing market share in the United States. And I know a lot of you are going to criticize this pick because you're going to say, oh, Lyft is just an app, they don't have any proprietary technology, or they don't have anything that's truly revolutionary. And I guess that's sort of a valid point. But I think that if that's your main point of criticism, you're kind of missing the bigger picture here. And the reason why I say that is because you shouldn't discount like the network of Lyft as being worth absolutely nothing, right? So a lot of companies, big tech companies, they rely on network to generate most of the value of the company, right? So a prime example of this is something like, let's say, a Snapchat, right? So Snapchat has a lot of similarities to Lyft, actually. When Snapchat first IPO'd, everyone was hating on the stock, and the stock absolutely tanked. And then they kind of just like did nothing for a really long time. The stock just kind of moved around sideways. And then recently, they've actually gone like and increased their daily active users and stuff like that, and their metrics are moving in the correct direction. So their stock has absolutely skyrocketed. So I think that maybe a similar thing is in store for Lyft, where right now everyone's hating on it, right? And they're like, oh, there's nothing really revolutionary about this app because it's just an app, right? Like there's nothing like crazy about it. But I think that as the network grows, that network itself is gonna provide value for Lyft. And I know you're gonna say, well, Snapchat makes the majority of their money from advertising. Well, I think actually Lyft can do that as well. So whether it be an autonomous driving network or a traditional network where you have a driver, maybe you can put a little screen inside the car of a Lyft, and then have that screen display an ad to the like passenger while the Lyft driver is driving. Or even better yet, if it's an autonomous driving network, that'll be an even more seamless experience. So I think a lot of taxis in Asia actually already have this, where they would have a little screen in the back, and yeah, you're kind of forced to watch the ad as you're being driven from place to place. So I think that, yeah, that could be a potential money maker for Lyft, and Lyft can start getting into the advertising space as well. So there's potential for like companies like Uber and Lyft to make more money from rideshare. And I think eventually this network will get to a point where it's big enough such that it can become a very profitable network. So yeah, I just don't think you can discount the network as being worth absolutely nothing. So that's just my opinion. Now this video is getting like super long, so I'm gonna end it here. Be sure to hit the like button if you enjoyed the video, and consider subscribing if you like this series. Be sure to follow me on Twitter and Instagram, links down below in the description as always. And with that being said, I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye bye!